Excellent. Awesome. Once again, welcome everyone who's joined us today for Taking a Leap to Modernize Your Marketing, presented by Modernize and Leap. We'll talk about that in a few seconds here, but want to introduce our great panelists today. I myself am Taylor Engstrom, and there at the bottom, I'll be moderating the discussion, partner marketing manager over at Modernize, and I'm joined by my colleague, Chris Palatroni.
Hey guys, Chris Palatroni here. I am one of the co-founders of Modernize. My role within the business is really to support the contractor side of our business. So most of my day-to-day is really interacting with some of the country's biggest contractors in the 4 different verticals that we play ball in. So nice to meet everybody.
Hi, I'm Michelle Doitian. I am VP of Marketing at New Look Home Design. We're an exterior remodeling company based in Columbia, Maryland. I've been in the home improvement industry in marketing for over 20 years on both the corporate side as well as the consulting side of the business. And I've seen a lot of changes over the years, probably not anything quite as dramatic as we're experiencing now. So this has definitely been a new one, and we've definitely at New Look had to make a lot of adjustments during this period of time, and I'm excited to share some of those with you guys today. So thanks for having me.
Awesome, thanks Michelle. I'm Tom Bash, Strategic Partnership Manager at Leap. I love seeing all the people writing in the chat that you're a current user of Leap. That's awesome. Love to hear your feedback. But excited to be on here and share, what I'm hearing from the field, and really excited to hear what Chris and Michelle are going to share as well. So thanks, Taylor.
Yeah, welcome everybody. And again, just quickly, we got some great speakers here. A ton of experience from home improvement, decades of experience here. So if you have questions at any time, please type them in the chat or the Q&A. We have a pretty scheduled webinar here in terms of a panel discussion, but if anything, any of the panelists say really hits home with you, please type that in and we'll try to get an answer. Chris, you want to tell us about Modernize?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, we are a digital marketing company. So anything with the click of a button is typically where we play ball. What's made us unique is we really only focus on 4 different industries: HVAC, window replacement, roofing, and solar installation. And so on a very broad level, we're playing matchmaker. We're trying to find homeowners interested in doing a remodeling project and connect them with contractors that do those remodeling projects. So lots of stuff that goes in between that, but I'd say at a basic level, it's Match.com for contracting.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that, Chris. I know there's a ton of interest from people that I've spoken with to learn more about what you do and what you have to offer. Those of you that aren't current Leap users, Leap is a digital in-home sales platform, if you will, and digitizes the entire sales process. So think from estimate to proposals and contracts, financing, secure payment capture, digitizing your pitch decks, your brochures, everything that you do. I like to equate it to everything you do from the time you pull up in the driveway to the time that you pull out of the driveway. Can be encompassed within Leap.
Awesome. And I jumped the gun a bit there, but I'd love to hear from our last panelist, Michelle, about New Look.
So New Look Home Design is an exterior remodeling company, primarily focused on roofing, that's been serving anywhere from southern New Jersey to northern Virginia since 2003. Like it says here, we definitely pride ourselves on being at the forefront of innovation. We're really always looking for new and better ways to improve and to create a better customer experience. That's always our goal. And that's what we do.
Excellent. Amazing. And Michelle, we talked to a ton of contractors over at Modernize and Leap, but you are a contractor working for a leading contracting company here. You're joined by a bunch of your peers here on this webinar. So just to kick us off, I'd love to hear the very first thing that we're all, really, really curious about, which is what changes have you made to adjust to the new normal?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and there's been a lot of them. Probably the first one that comes to mind in terms of the changes that we've made is really in our messaging. We do a lot of advertising, both traditional, digital, lead ag, all sorts of advertising at New Look. And the messaging was probably one of the first things that changed due to this. We always joke that, you know, in the ads that we do and things like that, we would love to talk about the company and the great things that we have to offer to consumers, you know, the things that we feel like bring a lot of value. You know, the fact that we do satellite imagery, the fact that we offer wonderful warranties, the fact that we have such an amazing production team. But when we do that, it kind of falls on deaf ears. And, you know, what they want to hear is buy now, save now, you know, best offer ever, and that sort of thing. So during this time, we've definitely had to change up that messaging, just really to be empathetic to what's going on right now. And, you know, we are dealing with people in a lot of different situations. We're all in a time of uncertainty, change. We're not sure when we're coming out of this. So, you know, the biggest thing is really understanding that everyone, you know, is in a different place and in a different emotional time. So talking through things like, you know, we are an essential business. We're an essential business for a reason. You know, if you have a roof that's failing, you don't want to wait a couple months until this is over to get that done. You want to take care of that now. So if you do need a company like ours, we're here. We're here to help. You know, just kind of let us know. So just like a softer approach. You know, also talking about the adjustments we're making in terms of we'll work how you want to work. You know, some people are okay with having a contractor come into their home still and, you know, maintaining safe social distancing and things like that. Others would prefer to meet outside, and we're doing that. We'll meet in, you know, in your backyard, in the driveway, in the garage, you know, whatever's comfortable for the homeowner. And we've even, probably our biggest change is that we've now added remote estimates. And that's something we've been talking about as a company for a long time. And this period kind of forced us to move that up the priority list. And it's been great. It's been, everybody's very excited about it. You know, we worked out some of the kinks. Obviously, we had to roll this out very, very quickly. But overall, that's been very successful.
Yeah, one of the things I see when I think of this type of question, and Michelle, obviously you've got such experience on a more granular level. When I think of like the changes that have been made more like on a very broad level, you mentioned the word uncertainty a little bit there. Think of the word of kind of like adaptability, if you will. It's so fascinating. I mean, I have such a good reach with so many different contractors in the country, speaking with them in the first 2 weeks that this was unfolding. Some of them were at a very different mindset than maybe where they are now, as they've kind of settled into, as this slide says, kind of the new norm. And so, I don't know, I think the big thing I look for when I talk to contractors is just how quickly they're able to adapt, right? Some people are kind of leaning into it a little bit more optimistic. And then there's some other ones that are still mourning their old life, if you will, the way things used to be back in January, February. So I find that part of it really interesting. Can you, Michelle, maybe just on a very, maybe step back a little bit, from a business perspective, have you guys, when you kind of think of how you are adapting overall, how are those conversations held at the leadership of the business?
Yeah, and we've definitely had to made a lot of changes. And I think what New Look is very good in general about being adaptable, like you said, Chris, I think that's a great word. Because again, this is a very extreme time, but as we all know in business and home improvements and life in general, things change, right? And the more adaptable you can be, the more successful you're going to be. And I think New Look as a whole has done a very good job of that. And so, yeah, as soon as all of this started to hit, you know, we very quickly made some changes. We, you know, looked at the staffing, looked at infrastructure, and, you know, said, okay, if this is how it's going to be, we can get through this, but not staying and looking exactly like we do now, maybe. So really being smart and making changes very quickly, being proactive in those changes. So it, you know, it did mean making, you know, making some cuts, temporary. You know, the goal is to get everything back in place as quickly as we can. But, you know, our goal was to get through this time as best we can, making smart decisions, you know, keeping expenses in check with, you know, the sales coming in, and not only getting ourselves through this time successfully, but also positioning ourselves for when we come out of this. So it's not like, okay, we just made it through that. You know, just making smart financial decisions now so that we come out on the other end, hopefully even stronger than we went in. It's really been an opportunity to look at every single thing that we're doing and saying, are these the right decisions? Are these smart choices? And, you know, I think that that's been very positive.
Yeah, no, that's great. I got a great quote on my wall that says adversity builds character.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all building character right now.
We are.
Yeah, one of the questions I get asked a lot, and I've had a number of these types of discussions, especially with our team within inside of Modernize. Everybody wants to know, like, what's the sediment out there? And so I think overarching my first thing is, the changes that are being made as people are having to adapt at a much faster pace than maybe they were a couple of months ago. And I think more than anything, what they're trying to do is stitch together kind of their confidence in the new reality, right? Mm-hmm. This change has affected not just lead flow, but it's affected sales, it's affected your ability to install, your ability to collect cash. And obviously, the more confident we have as owners that all those pieces can be woven together in a somewhat seamless fashion, that's really where we feel confident to kind of expand our business and grow and kind of lean in with optimism. So adaptability is definitely the overarching topic that I talk a lot about. But I would say a couple of the sub bullet points on that, and the big one is cash flow. Even from what we've done at Modernize, and I think, and even on a personal level, I think we've all been there. First thing we do is try to figure out, like, what are our expenses and where's cash coming in, right? And so obviously the different buckets I mentioned all bleed into that. But I think it's forced everybody to get a little bit sharper with the pencil, maybe cut some of the lunches, stop watering the plants. I mean, you're kind of looking at, like, what do we need to, what's survival mode, if you will? And then also being very mindful of how do we keep cash coming in? Even if sales are slowing down a little bit or lead flow, but how do we keep that cash coming in? And obviously that's been tackled on a number of fronts with our clients. And then I would say one of the other pieces to that as well is, I don't think this has really been a big change, but I'd love your perspective on it, Michelle. Is most of the people I interact with, they have a kind of a panel of peers within the industry as well. And I think everybody's kind of leaning on their networks maybe a little bit more now than they would before to just try to understand on a more granular level, hey, what are you guys doing? What's working? What's not working? And I think what they're looking for more than anything is a little bit of optimism that, hey, I could sell virtually, or it's still possible to install, or there's still ways to kind of navigate the lay of the land. So I'm curious from your perspective specifically, when you look at kind of the installation, which I think is a really big topic for a lot of companies, how have you guys kind of addressed keeping the installations going? Have you run into any sort of hiccups at all with keeping jobs going and cash coming in?
No, you know what? We've been surprisingly fortunate. And like you said, we do talk to others in the industry and others that have relationships with remodelers around the country. And it seems, and what we've experienced personally, but it seems that those that were fortunate enough to be able to stay in the game, keep as much as possible, with adjustments, of course, but keep as much as possible the original game plan in place. So, if, we were planning to market, we are still doing, aggressive marketing. We've had to adjust absolutely on the sales side and be light of foot on that. And we just made those changes really, really quickly to be able to adapt. Our sales team has done an unbelievable job in adapting to that. And installation, that's probably I would think probably the most business as usual. The nice thing with roofing is that you don't have to go into people's homes. It can all be done outside the home. So while we definitely have made some changes there for sure, that's probably stayed the same. But on the marketing side, I think it's actually, and going into this, we had no idea what to expect. We tried to just make as smart decisions as we could with the information we had. And we tried to keep things as similar as possible. Obviously, some of our strategies were cut. There were no more home shows. There's no canvassing right now, some of those things that we were doing. So we're relying more on some of our other lead sources right now. But the nice thing is we've really found that the demand is still there. Like I said, we've changed the messaging. We're talking to people in kind of this new normal. But people are now, they're home. They're spending so much time in their homes like they never have before. They're looking around, they're seeing these things that's like, I should have done these, years ago. I just haven't had the time. Life gets in the way, right? And so now they're able to focus on these things. And so I think for those remodelers that have been able to stay in the game, I think it's actually, really, really paid off, which is great to see. We're helping these homeowners get to these projects that they really need to get to. We're helping keep their homes safe, which feels good. And, we're keeping our team busy as much as possible. And, I think every day is a different day. And it's very interesting, every day is a different day. And I think just being able to adjust, like we said, be light of foot and flow with these different things, there's definitely a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and terrific, Michelle. I know you mentioned a couple times, and people are actually typing in the chat as well about the transition to remote estimates to virtual appointments. And I know Tom, you're uniquely positioned over at Leap. That's part of the product of Leap. So what are you seeing on your side? I mean, are more contractors coming in the door and asking about Leap, or more of your users engaged, and previously they weren't totally sure on the value of Leap? I mean, what are you seeing on your side from a contractor angle?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there's a difference, right, between a virtual estimate and a sale, and I think sometimes those two can kind of get convoluted in the same sentence, and they're really two different things, right? Providing an estimate to somebody isn't the same thing as providing them with the service of a sale, right? Actually educating them on the process and on the material and the product, and what's going to transpire, and so I think that you have to be very careful on those two, and I see sometimes people confusing those. But yeah, we've seen a ton of demand right now for Leap. Obviously, people are looking for ways to be able to continue business as usual, right, in this environment. And obviously, Leap's positioned well, being a digital sales platform to do that. Simply connecting to a Zoom and being able to go through the sales process remotely is fantastic. But what people are really doing, I think now what I've seen more of, is that they're spending time on the business as opposed to in the business, and so they're utilizing this period to really get all their ducks in a row and make sure that they're well positioned to accelerate when when we get back to a new normal per se. So they're really hunkering down and adopting Leap and using this time to better themselves and their businesses.
It's interesting you mentioned something there, Todd. It struck me on a conversation I've had with a couple pretty big companies, one out in your area, neck of the woods, Michelle. And it was interesting because I think all companies that are used to a very high flow of homeowner demand into their business or inquiries, let's just face it, when business is busy, it's hard to systematically work each opportunity and get as much out of all of your marketing efforts. And I know as marketing professionals, we're always like, work the leads more. And it's funny because I've had a couple companies where they've gotten so much less leads because they're built on events or retail or canvassing. And some of my clients are built on all three of them. So they kind of took a multiple hit there. And so I remember one owner specifically a couple of weeks ago. At first he was a little, it was like the sky's falling, and I think week 1. And then I think in week 3, he was like, you know what we're doing? We're actually working our database. And we're calling all of these homeowners. And he's like, it's amazing, Chris. Like, there's so much opportunity there. And I'm like, oh my Lord, like 2 years of talking to you is like on the wayside. But this situation is like, voila. So I do think it forces us to kind of, make a dollar out of 15 cents in some regards. But what I think more than anything, it opens up the idea of like, when we go back to whatever this may look like post-COVID, that there's just a lot of things that, to Tom's point, we may not have paid a lot of attention to because we didn't have the time, but carry value in the business and should be a more stable part of it. So working your database, for those of you that are not doing it, according to a couple of big guys out there, there's value in doing so. So
yeah, and Chris, I'll add one thing to that too, just to tie into that. You mentioned something too, like we've spent years, talking to contractors about, working their pipeline and adopting technology and all these different things. And I think what this period has allowed is that people are kind of forced into these things that they had just kind of put off for generally what I hear is like a fear of, going into adopting some kind of new process or new system. And, they're finding out, having now been forced into it, that it's not as bad as they thought it would be. So it's interesting to hear that from people. But they've been resistant and scared, and now they're just kind of thrown right into it.
Yeah, it's amazing what adversity will do. It kind of forces it. But I mean, you could take that from working your leads to adopting new technology, to making less out of more, or more out of less. So yeah, lots of good lessons to be learned here if you're looking for them.
Yeah, and if I could just keep the party going here, one thing that we just hit on with Michelle made a great point, like the fact that homeowner demand still exists, right? So in terms of our next prompt, how has homeowner behavior shifted, and has it really? So one thing I want to quickly do is As Chris mentioned a couple times, as a top lead generation company in the country for the trades we work within, we're generating anywhere from 150,000 to 200,000 homeowner requests each month. So we see a ton of homeowner data, right? So we have access to that. And what we're seeing is the last time we pulled these numbers, home improvement leads, are the ones that we generate on modernize.com, are only down 2% from February to March. And obviously we're mid to late April here, so this data is going to bake, and we're already trending April to produce more leads April than March. So if the question is, I find a lot of homeowners are skittish, or are you reading the news like no one's trying to do these projects? The fundamental fact is the demand still exists, right? So Michelle put it great. Like, a lot of people are now have the time sitting at home to look around and be like, yeah, maybe I do need to replace my windows, or maybe it is time, right? So wanted to quickly touch on this. And the second point we mentioned a bunch of times, right, is that virtual appointments, right? It's one thing to adjust as a contractor to that new process. It's another thing, do homeowners even want that? And the data says yes. The data says that more than 40% of homeowners are willing to schedule a virtual appointment with a home services pro. And again, we pulled this number, 2-3 weeks ago. It's probably increased from there, just as this become the new normal. So with that all being said, folks, how has homeowner behavior shifted? Has it? Michelle, I'd love to start with you.
It's funny. I think, I work closely with with our call center, who, talk to homeowners multiple times a day, every day. And the sentiment among them is everybody's like really chill, which is kind of makes our lives easier. I just think this has been an opportunity for everybody to kind of slow down. Just like you guys were talking about, which I agree 100%, really being able to focus on your business. I think now people are able to focus on themselves, their families, their home. So it's an interesting, you talk about silver linings and kind of difficult and tough situations. And I think that's one of them. I think people are, appreciative of companies like ours that are going to come and help them. They're happy to have us in their home. When this kind of first started, we had there was a lot of nervousness about, are you going to, are the people entering our home going to be safe? Are they, all of these things. And we adjusted our communications that go out prior to the appointment to make sure that they know what, specific safety measures we're taking. And now it's to the point, I guess, because people have just adjusted, that they're like, come on over, and of course we'll sit at opposite ends. Our sales reps will sit at opposite ends of the table. Now they're not going to sit right next to them, do those things, wear their booties like they always do. They have masks if need be, and they're doing all of those things. But it's just interesting that I just think it's almost like this, people can really focus when our sales reps go in the house. They can really, take that time, pay attention, focus, which has been a positive in all of this.
Michelle,
Yeah.
one thing, sorry, Chris, one thing I've heard from several contractors now is that the leads that they do get are actually closing at a higher percentage. Is that holding true for you? I feel like it makes sense that they're probably more engaged, and if they're actually calling you, then they're really interested, and they're not, say, kicking a tire.
Yeah.
So are you seeing is that holding true on your end?
I think so. I think they're definitely a more interested buyer right now. And that was something going in. We were like, are people just, going to be bored and just want to have, like we always say, Saturday afternoon entertainment. But no, they're definitely serious buyers. Also, the big unknown was when we did start the remote. We're like, are we going to be able to sell with the same process over remote, or are we going to see a decline there? And we've seen that be very successful as well. So. I think they're definitely an interested group of buyers.
Yeah, it was interesting. When the first week that this went down, when the sky was falling in week 1, I'm not gonna lie, like I was like, wow, we generate leads, like there goes that, like who's gonna, you know what I mean? Like we get so many leads, like there's gonna be so much less interest. And it was fascinating to see. I mean, the proof is in the data, and to the point we made on the previous slide, like we haven't seen a homeowner dip. And it's not to say we won't, or over time, like who knows where the numbers are going to fall, but it reminds me of something I learned when I used to be a contractor back in the day. And at a very early age, I was taught, like, don't put your assumptions on other people.
Yes.
And it's a really interesting thing for this particular time, where I think we're all going through somewhat uncharted territory, right? There is no trail down COVID. Nobody's seen it. So, I mean, we only see the step in front of us. And I think anytime where you don't know, you don't see the trail, you question whether you're on the right path. And I think for this specifically, the best advice I could give is there are homeowners out there looking for contractors. You may have to switch from a door-to-door campaign to maybe something a little bit more digital. I heard TV seems to be doing well, but you might have to switch your tactics up a little bit. But I would encourage you not to put any of your assumptions on the homeowner's interest. I was always believed that if somebody gave you their information, that they're an interested buyer. So it's interesting because I've heard the same thing, Michelle, from a number of clients where they're more serious, we get higher closing rates. And there's a part of me where I can resonate with that and be like, well, yeah, it's COVID. I mean, if someone wants you at the house, I mean, it should close higher. And then the other part of me goes like, well, who in their right mind just gives up their information any day at any point in time, unless they really want an estimate? And I really do hold that to be true, that there might be different dynamics now, maybe less competition, maybe they're more primed for the appointment because they have time and the decision makers are there, maybe financing, like there could be a multitude of things playing into those increased closing rates, including the perception of the contractor and the sales reps going out there. But big advice I would say is like, there's definitely people interested, just try to not get in your own way and put assumptions out there, because plenty of business is being closed right now.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think I talk about that all the time, the mindset shift. Exactly like you're saying, we tend to put, just as in general, as people, we put our own feelings and emotions into things and assume that's how others are going to react as well. So I agree with you 100%. And especially in a time like this that is uncertain, people just, they react differently. And so, you definitely have to just sort of feel people out a little bit and kind of go with it. And be, like we said at the very beginning, empathetic, that everybody kind of handles things differently, reacts to things differently, and, just be there for them, however that may be. So.
Yeah, without a doubt, I agree.
Excellent. So to keep it moving along here, we've talked about this a couple times. I know, Chris, you definitely hit on it. But really the question is, and why a lot of people are joining is, why is it important to market now? And as you're marketing now, like how has your strategy, how is your tactic, how is your budget, how have those things changed?
Yeah, for us at New Look, I think one of the things is a lot of this we've kind of touched upon, but I think, like we said, that there's a few big opportunities here. I think one is there's demand. There's still demand. So I think if people are skeptical or concerned that, homeowners are kind of, holing up in their houses and saying, well, we're going to wait and see, I'm sure there is some of that, but there's definitely still a lot of demand out there. So like I said, if you're in a position where you're fortunate enough to be able to stay in, keep working with a Modernize, keep it, your radio out there, your TV out there. There's a lot of opportunity and an opportunity to gain market share as well, because not everyone is still out there. People kind of, it seems like, took a couple paths. They're like, we're going to sit tight, wait for this thing to like blow over, and then we're going to come back. Or no, we're going to go full speed ahead, cautious, aggressive but realistic in their approach. And if you're in that, in there's a lot of opportunity to gain market share. We work with a lot of radio stations, TV, and they've been very generous during this time to bonus us a lot of spots. And we're hearing all the time, people are like, you guys are everywhere. We see you everywhere. And we didn't increase spend. And if anything, we decreased spend a bit. But, the perception now, because it's not as noisy as it was a month or two ago, is we're everywhere. And so that's a great opportunity, for us to, again, not just to get through this period, but to come out strong on the other end.
Yeah, you made an interesting point. I worded it a little different. You said it's not as noisy. I look at it as like you almost win by default in some regards. Like if you have the ability to market your business now, which I would rephrase those words almost in a way of, you feel confident that the money you spend today will still produce meaningful results, right? Like that's another way of kind of rephrasing it. And I think what I see a lot of is those companies that aren't 100% sure of should they go digital, should they go in the home. They're not 100% sure of how they're going to face installations. And keep in mind, each state is slightly different in terms of the way this is playing out. Some companies have not had to adjust at all to the virtual sale. If anything, they've had to just adopt different COVID type procedures to get in the home, where there's other states like PA where almost anybody that operates in PA is not operating to some extent. So I do think it's different by market, but I'd say the big thing is, there is going to be a point where we reach over the midway mark here, and there's more confidence that things are going to go back to a more, we'll call it sustainable normal, if you will. And when that happens, everybody's going to be trying to hire. Everybody's going to be trying to market. Everybody's going to be looking for the installer and the canvassing. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I look at this as a different way, and I focus a lot on the way you think and your mindset, if you will. Nobody's wording it quite like this, so this is kind of my own interpretation. I look at this as like building better brand equity. Michelle, I mentioned this to you the other day when we spoke. I think this is a great opportunity to add to the legacy of your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I think about when I started this company 15 years ago, nobody told me it was going to be successful. There was just a lot of grit and perseverance that was put into it. And I think anybody out there that is part of the leadership team or an owner of a company, we just put a lot of sweat and tears into growing our business. I'd say probably in week 2, I'd be like, oh, damned if COVID's going to be the reason like this thing doesn't succeed anymore. So a certain level of pride that kind of built up, if you will. And it was like, all right, put on your big boy pants. Let's find a way to make this work. And so I look at this as a great opportunity from a brand perspective. With the Modernize crew specifically, we took an approach of nobody gets left behind. So we have no intentions of furloughing or letting anybody go. Like, we believe everybody needs to be with us through this transition. And so I think if you have that opportunity and that level of optimism where you can lean in, I think this is a phenomenal story for your brand. There's a lot of companies that are choosing not to participate or don't have the confidence to do so, and that's fine. But for those companies that do, I think this is just another notch on your legacy belt.
Yeah. And I would add to that, I think that all makes total sense. And I think also when it comes to brand, right, and thinking more long-term, not just, the leads you're going to get today and tomorrow, but a little more long-term, I think stopping your branding and then trying to restart it a few months down the road is very challenging. And all that time and money and energy that you spent up until now, you're going to lose some of that, right? So just maintaining it in some way. And, it was brought up earlier, just reaching out to your client base, right? Reaching out to your customer base. That's a great way to keep your name out there. So it doesn't have to be, high ticket strategies necessarily, but just how do I stay current? How do I stay connected? How do I tell people we're here? We want to help however we can. And finding those opportunities, again, I think you're going to come out of it much stronger, not just in terms of business that day, but like you're saying, Chris, just in terms of your brand equity long term.
Yeah. The only other thing I would add to that, guys, is, there's been, for those of you that are faced with the idea that you have to learn the virtual sale. Once again, it's different by market. So for those that are in markets where the virtual sale is more of a necessity than a nice to have, I will say this with good confidence that, if you are having to learn the virtual sale, there are ways to do it very effectively. I don't know all the nuances for every single company I talk to, but I know a couple of companies that do pretty meaningful number, north of 100 million. And they've been able to perfect the virtual sale to the point that they haven't really lost a whole lot from a closing percentage from their in-home appointments to their virtual sale. And I guess the confidence I would try to say is like, it can happen, and it can happen very efficiently and effectively. I think you just got to kind of lean into it to say, is this what is needed to keep my business going? And if the answer is yes, I'm sure there's a peer or two of yours within the industry that would give you a couple tips or tricks, or look at over of different industries that you may not be a competitor of theirs, and they may be more willing to relinquish some of their tactics on how to do that. So I think there's a place for it, and it works for those of you that are kind of faced with that reality of having to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think we were definitely in that boat with virtual. We'd been talking about it as a company for a long time, and we were kind of forced into it. And like you said, it's not as scary as it seems. Technology today, it's so easy, and people are used to it and comfortable with it. And we pride ourselves in general as a company that uses, technology. We use Leap, we use Hover to do our satellite imagery, so we pride ourselves on being sort of cutting edge again, in serving the homeowner in the best way possible. So adding people, when we get out of this, people are going back to their crazy busy lives and all that. Maybe it's easier for them, to not have somebody come out to the house, but do it virtually. I think this is going to be a big strategy for us, not just now, but going forward.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Excellent. All right, moving along. How are you preparing for life post-virus? And I think you guys have hit on it a couple times, especially Chris. We're past the midway point, right? So How much time are you spending thinking about the bounce back? How are you adjusting marketing, sales, staffing, just strategy overall? All of that stuff is super valuable.
Yeah, and we're in this process now. The first couple weeks of this was really like, okay, what do we do now? What do we do to stay afloat now? What decisions do we have to make right now? And what adjustments do we have to make? And now we're in this process of what does the company overall, from a marketing standpoint, a sales standpoint, production, staffing, what does that kind of look like? And I think as we all have talked about and we all, I think, are experiencing, there's still a lot of unknowns. We don't know what the time frame is going to be on this. We don't know what it's going to look like on the other side. So all you can do is take the information you have on hand and make the best plans, possible. So as an organization, we're definitely looking at all of this. That's kind of like we've got everything, I'd say as much as possible under control for now. And it's like, okay, what do things look like when we come out? And, working as a leadership team on what that looks like. So.
Yeah. And I'd say for like on the Modernize side, it's, we have essentially two masters on our side of the business. We have the homeowner side of the business, and we have the partner contractor side of our business. And so I'd say on the homeowner front, we always have the ability to spend more on behalf of our network and to engage the homeowners to a higher degree and kind of bring more people into the funnel, if you will, of the community. So I think on that front, we're positioned well. For us, it really is more the confidence of our partner base. And some of it's a little bit more applicable based on certain states not being able to operate. But I think as the confidence for the contractors comes back into play, where once again that they can not only procure a lead, but move the lead through the entire business cycle in a very confident and efficient manner. I think that's the point, at least for us, where things go a little bit more back to the norm. I'd say the big thing that we're looking for in almost everything we do, and this has been true since the beginning of COVID, is our clients have relied on us for different stuff at this point. There is a raw product we provide in the lead itself or whatnot, but a lot of it is the tactical advice, the recipe, the know-how to turn that product into business. And we've seen the breadth of ask from our clients be a little bit broader than before. A lot of the stuff that you do, Taylor, in building partnerships with good companies like Leap or Hover, or any other company out there. And so that's really the big thing on ours is our preparation for life post-virus is really just to understand what our clients are looking for more and being a little bit more in tune with their needs. Not just can we supply a lead, but are there other elements that they're looking for as well?
Yeah, and I'll add too, the things that, what I see the most happening right now is obviously, people wanting to continue business and keep, servicing their customers and reaching out to their prospects and, doing their normal day-to-day business, but also recognizing that, they're using this time as sort of a self-audit, right? Trimming the fat and being leaner and being more efficient. And a lot of that involves, having the right processes and systems and stuff in place. And so whether that's, an SOP at your company, technology is a great way to mitigate, putting down the homeowner's name 27 times, right, from start to finish. So looking at technology, adopting technology, things that are going to help you accelerate through this and come out on the better side. And that's a lot of what I'm hearing and seeing is that people are using this time to, kind of do an audit of their business.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you mentioned, Tom. I was on a call the other day with one of our senior sales guys, a good friend of mine. And it was interesting because we were talking on a personal level, which I think there's so much that you learn on a personal level that gets applied to business. And one of the things he said is he's like, he wants to make sure that this time that he is in shelter in place or isolation, that he didn't waste this chunk of his life, right? Yeah. That we didn't just lose 6 months of whatever, 4 months or whatever. And, both him and me are really habitual guys. We have pretty passionate rituals, if you will. And so we kind of just share on a personal level. How do you use the situation and the environment in which you're put in to your advantage? And so I do think that's really, there's a lot of things as owners you don't get the opportunity to do when business is moving at like warp 10. So I think this is really a great opportunity to dive into those systems, to look at things, to build relationships, to better your own self, to get the mental clarity. I mean, maybe this is the work-life balance. Who knows? Like maybe it's a little bit more life right now, So, I think a lot of it is just how you frame the particular situation. But if you can find a way to do it in a positive, more optimistic way, then I'm confident that this is not a waste of anybody's life. This is really just a necessary component for all of us to take 2 steps forward after this. So I think that's a great business lesson and personal as well.
I think also just kind of throughout this, I keep using the phrase silver linings. Obviously there's a lot of, like we've said, uncertainty, all those things. But, if you look at, there's a lot of silver linings. Like I look at myself, like every night I get to have dinner with my family. Like we never had dinner together before this. We were always running in 4 different directions, right? So that's a nice thing. And when I look at it from a business perspective, we went into this at New Look and this thing hit and we're like, we had no idea what to expect. You know what I mean? We're like, it could fall a whole bunch of different ways. But the silver linings are, you look now, and I feel like us, and I think, a lot of companies that are fortunate like us to be able to, still be running, we're not just surviving, we're thriving. Like you said, we're, Tom, we're looking at our systems, looking at how we're doing things, being more efficient. And that's going to be great, not just for now, but going forward. And just this sense of community, which I think we're all feeling, right? Because it's this whole, we're all in this together. I think that's also, again, when you talk about being a company that's now part of the community, and we're not just here to sell you something, or, it's just a very different, message and feel, and it feels good. We've even on the radio, we've done some public service announcements, and it just feels good. It's just a different, again, I wish it were for a better reason, but it just feels like nice to be a part of the community. Again, it's like another silver lining to this. I think it's kind of repositioned how a lot of businesses, look at all I know in my area, there's all these group chats about supporting local restaurants, takeout Tuesdays, people really banding together. And I think that's, another silver lining that's kind of coming out, out of this. So, like we said, I just think there is a lot of opportunity out there. I think, like you said, Chris, it's, just being, up to making some adjustments, making some changes, and going out and getting it. And, which a lot of our peers are doing, and it's great.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, those are all great insights. And I just want to sort of be cognizant of everyone's time here as we pull into the last point. But what would be your advice to contractors today? And Michelle, obviously, you're part of a contracting company. I've got some questions so far. We've talked very much high level about mindset shifts and sort of the macro things that COVID-19 has shifted in everyone's, the way they conduct business. But I'd love to get really in the weeds on this in terms of what would your advice be to contractors? Michelle, any great marketing idea you've had recently, or any like new channel you've tried, or, stuff you're seeing in the industry that gives you inspiration? Anything sort of really micro and actionable would be awesome.
Yeah, I think, I think the biggest advice I can give on this, with our strategies, we've adjusted, but it's not like we've made a complete shift in what we're doing. It's pretty similar to what we were doing. One thing is that I would say is, which has really come out during this time, is the relationships that you have with the different, like a Modernize, or, other vendors that you work with. I think leveraging those relationships, taking them to the next level, I think that can allow you to, do things even better, like get more granular, get more, talk through with them exactly what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. I think that this time has provided an opportunity to do that. And I think that's been very beneficial. So, and just like always, looking at the numbers, looking at the results, we don't want a time like this that things may be adjusted, but making sure you're staying on top of it now more than ever, and making sure that you're looking at those things, making any adjustments that you need in real time. And, every penny counts. So just, really making sure you're making smart decisions.
That's great. My advice would cross over to both personal and professional, but I think in times where there's a little bit more stress than normal, I think it's really important to have, I'll just call it the work-life balance. But Michelle said it, it's the dinner with the kids sometimes, brings in, an element of joy into the day. I think like a lot of you guys, we put our heads down and we work, and we just work. Mm-hmm. And we work some more, and then we're carrying work home, and it's just like, it's nonstop. And there's an element of like, yes, you need to put in the hard work to get the results, but there's also a balance in everything we do. And so I think on a personal level, look, we all just have slightly more time. We can't eat at restaurants. We don't get a walk in the parks, you know what I mean? And so I think that's a great opportunity to kind of look at your core values of the person and say, should I be building better habits right now? Where am I deficient in my values as a person, and what, do I want to aspire? And I think you can do the same thing at a company level. You can look at your core values as a business and say, here's an opportunity for us to do some of the very deep discipline work that we just don't always have the time for when we're in the busy season and leads are flying off the hook and we just, we're installing, you know what I mean? Like we just don't always have that time to slow down. And I think not that everybody's slow, but I think everybody would agree we have more time now through a force to slow down. And I think if you approach it the right way, you can look at that as a blessing. And you can use this opportunities to just recalibrate some really good habits, if you will, or build new habits, so that when things do get busy, you're more poised to tackle those things and maybe carry, some new stuff with you. So I would say this is just a really good time to kind of do some reflection and build off that. I know that's a little vague in the way that I say that, but I do believe it's super important for us to run successful companies.
Yeah, I'll add a few things real quickly. One, use this time to audit your business and your processes and your systems. Make sure that you're being as efficient as possible. I know I had mentioned that earlier. But when it comes down to how can you continue to market? Let people know you're open. I think being authentic, showing empathy is really important during this time and moving forward. And then using this time to train your staff. Now's a great time to instill those best practices and go through what that sales process looks like. I know for a lot of people, transitioning from being at the kitchen table to now doing it remotely can be different. And I think you really need to. It's more important now than ever to hone in on what those that sales process looks like and get really good at it.
Amazing.
Great.
Awesome. All great advice, very tactical, very actionable from everyone. I'd love to continue on to the Q&A, but before we did that, folks, we prepared some resources on both our side, Modernize and Leap. Modernize, we have a virtual resources sort of hub in which we have information about how to run virtual appointments, what reasons you should still be marketing, how to adjust your marketing, all those sort of great stuff. So we'll be sending out this deck after this broadcast, so you'll have access to this. But Leap also prepared a home contractor's guide to making a comeback from a crisis, right? So everyone wants to be doing that. Make sure you get a fast start out of this. Make sure you check those out after I send this out. Now we move on to the Q&A. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we tried to be extremely, educational and provide a lot of best practices to you all. But if you have any questions right now, feel free to type them in and we'll try and get them answered. Cool. Chris, we have a question about the kind of trades Modernize works in. I think you mentioned it once or twice, but we'd love to know what kind of leads Modernize is producing for contractors.
Yeah, absolutely. So we really focus on 4 core trades: residential window replacement, so multiple windows; residential roof installation; HVAC system replacement, as well as solar installation. There are some fringe trades we do in there, like bathrooms and siding. They're just not the core focus of our business. So we try to be very specific to those 4 industries: windows, roofing, HVAC, and solar.
And then what else do I have? Tom, someone's asking about pricing for Leap.
Yeah, it depends on how many users they're bringing on. I'd say best thing to do is reach out to our team for a consultation. What they really want to do is kind of do a discovery process. What does your sales process look like? Can we help? If we can, then we're going to be obviously happy to. But if we can't, we're going to be very honest there. So best thing to do is reach out to learn more. I know you can, if you go to our website right at the bottom, you can request that discovery call. But I'd love to give you a solid answer, but it just varies on, company size and structure.
Awesome. Michelle, people are curious about promotions, incentives, offers, how you all are thinking about that during this time.
Yeah, we find it's funny because I said now has been a time where we have been able to focus our messaging on other things, but Offers still hold king. So yeah, we're definitely still doing offers. We've done a couple different things over the last few weeks. We're not offering a specific discount like we typically do. We've done more like, we'll work with you. We're working to give you the lowest prices possible, which we really are. I mean, we've really worked hard to be able to reduce our costs and pass those on directly to the customers. So, you know, just telling them we're going to work with them and figure out the best solution for you. We have financing options as well. And then we've also been offering a $1,000 voucher. And those we have very limited quantities. We don't do those in every single sale. And those are really reserved for people who need to have their roof replaced, but they're in a tough time right now. They may be, you know, furloughed or something like that. And so we're offering something deeper for somebody, you know, who's in a situation like that, because we do want to help them out.
Excellent. Super helpful. Chris, last one. There's a question about solar homeowners and how we're able to sort of like qualify and filter for them. Could you talk a little bit about the sort of modernized scrubbing process, or, you know, any sort of relevant points there?
Yeah, I saw two that came in. So for the solar question, we focus mainly on solar PV, not solar thermal. So the solar panels on the roof, obviously. You know, the lead capturing information is pretty consistent across all of the industries in which we operate, which is home ownership, you know, complete address, first name, last name, phone number, email, consent to follow up. The trade specific questions are trade specific. For solar, we look for their monthly spent on electricity bill. And then some of our forms will capture like shading questions. And usually the utility bill is the only disqualifier that we add as another layer, if you will, disqualifying people based on, you know, over 100 and spend or under 100 and spend. I did see one other question that came up in here, Taylor, with regards to kitchen and bathroom leads.
Yeah.
We do not list it on our website. We do deal a little bit in kitchen and bath. So normally what we do is we call them fringe trades. They're usually like add-ons to what our other contractors or like our core trades. So if there's an interest in that, we can certainly look at it. We do generate some volume for it. It's just not to the magnitude that those four trades are. And then Taylor, there's one other question here. This might be better for Michelle. It said, can you explain the difference between Google Ads and Google Local Service Ads and how to access both? She might have a little bit more experience with that.
Yeah, that's probably a whole different conversation. There's a lot. It's a big question. But it just like the name applies, that the local service ads, those are kind of like the old Google Maps that are, you know, specific to your location, your actual office location. The Google ads you kind of set up, just like it says, you set up ads based on certain keywords, and you can target the geography that you hit with those. So it's a little bit more of you have a little more control over who sees that, and you can hit, you know, the areas that you want to hit. But like I said, that's a whole that would be a whole webinar in itself.
Yeah, let's get that one scheduled. Awesome. Well, that's it for the Q&A. I mentioned the chat here. If you have any questions we didn't get to, you can email us directly. I'm tangstrom@modernize.com, and Tom over at Leap is tbash@leapdigital.com. Guys, obviously it's a webinar, so we want to make sure not only do you get a bunch of education and takeaways, but, you know, if you're interested in any of the services that we touched on lightly, whether it's Modernize or Leap, we have an offer for you. So Modernize is offering 15% off to new customers. So yeah, again, one of the best ways to make sure you're well positioned coming out of this is to have homeowner pipeline. Modernize is a great way to do that. And obviously Leap realizes things may be slow during the current situation. They'd love to talk to you individually about what working with Leap could be like. Again, there's a ton of Leap customers on this webinar. Happy folks who are getting a lot out of the digitization of their sales process given COVID-19. But again, we'll send you the deck with all this information as well as a recording of this live webinar for you to share and check this stuff out. But that's it. Thanks for joining us. We're coming up tight here on time with a minute left. Michelle, Tom, Chris, thank you so much for joining us, for your valuable insight. If you have anything to leave us with, now's the time.
Just say thank you, appreciate it, and use this time to you know, do that self-audit and make sure you're prepared for when we all come out of this.
Yeah, I would say thank you as well, and I would just say look for those silver linings. They're out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys as well. And if there's stuff we haven't touched on, you can feel free to reach out to Taylor. If he can't answer the questions, I'm happy to answer some questions on a more silo capacity. So yeah, feel free to keep reaching out. We're happy to help where we can.
Enjoy your day, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Take it easy.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.